Normally, I would say we are live in Studio B, but I think that has to be amended to I am live in Studio B with your day-to-day BYU sports play-by-play. Jason Shepard here, Spencer Linton live from AT&T Stadium, site of the Big 12 title game tomorrow. And we are very pleased to be joined and have plenty of time for one Dennis Pitta, former BYU and NFL tight end, joining us here on BYU Sports Nation. Dennis, it's good to see you.
Thank you, guys. It's great to be on this show. It's always a breath of fresh air when it's your two faces and not one who shall remain nameless. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks for making time for me, guys.
It is a big, big weekend. And look, you can argue if it's the biggest game BYU's ever played. We know that there's so much on the line for this game for BYU. In your opinion, what would a Big 12 championship and a college football playoff berth mean to this BYU football program?
Well, man, I would agree with you in the sense that this is the biggest game in recent memory for BYU in a long, long time. And I can think of some big games. I mean, I know I played in that AT&T Stadium a handful of years ago, almost 2 decades ago now. Against number 3 Oklahoma, and that was a big game, but it was, the first game of the season, and pales in comparison to what's on the line in this one for a Big 12 championship, a berth in the ball. You have this game live; it's a playoff game, and if you're able to do that and understand what's at stake, I think you have a good chance. And listen, it is so hard to beat a good team twice. And I know Texas Tech is thinking that, man, this BYU team, we handled them the first time at home. It's going to be that much harder to beat them again in a neutral site, albeit in the state of Texas. But I think it's going to be a tall order for Texas Tech to be able to run away with this one again. I love that BYU gets a second chance at this, and I'm excited for the game tomorrow.
Dennis, we just ran through our list of reasons why we feel strongly that this will be a different type of game that BYU plays than what they ran into in that buzzsaw in Lubbock. What's at the top of the list in your mind of why BYU will be a different team and this will be a different game tomorrow? Why it could be anyway?
Well, first, I did something that I think was a very important exercise. I went back this morning and watched the game again. And you take out the emotion, you take out just everything that was present at that game when you first watched it live, and you just look at the plays, and you look at our execution, you look at the turnovers, you look at the penalties, you look at the totality of the game play for play, and strip all emotion and everything else out of it. And BYU did not play that poorly, to be completely honest. They did some really good things, especially early on in the run game. They had some costly false starts that put them behind the chains. They obviously had some muffs on special teams. You had a literal muff punt. You missed a field goal. You shanked a punt. You did some uncharacteristic things in that game. Now, that was a difficult environment to be in. You also had some drops. You had JoJo Phillips coming wide open across the field, went right through his hands. And so things that BYU hasn't done all year, they did and made mistakes doing against Texas Tech the first time around. But you also have to look at the positive things they did in that game. They were stingy in the red zone. I mean, Texas Tech is not world beaters in the red zone. They've struggled all year in that respect. You held them to 5 field goals. Even when you got put in a bad position defensively and the field got flipped with a turnover, a muff punt, whatever it was, you held strong. You didn't give up touchdowns for the most part in that game. And, the offense, aside from, their miscues on third down, I thought moved the ball pretty effectively at times. And so I think you have to look at this game and say, BYU did a lot of good things, and you take out some of those mistakes. You take out the turnover differential, which is the biggest indicator of wins and losses in any game of football at any level. And, I think it's a much closer game. And so I think this is going to be a completely different story this time around. I think BYU is in a completely different place mentally coming into this one. You're going to have an equal crowd, if not more BYU fans in that stadium than Texas Tech fans. And the environment's going to be completely different. The energy is going to be different. You're going to have a different confidence as a BYU team knowing, you know what, we made a lot of mistakes because when you're playing in that game, you feel like, these guys are so good. But then when you go back and you watch the film, you're like, man, we did that wrong, we did that wrong, we did that wrong. And you start to realize, man, we played with these guys. We just shot ourselves in the foot. And so I think it's going to be a totally different story.
Dennis Pitta joining us here on BYU Sports Nation. Along those same lines, Dennis, who or what do you think will be the why factor if BYU beats Texas Tech? Is there a specific player, maybe a position group that you think kind of could be the difference?
Yeah, I think I'll give you one on each side of the ball. I think BYU's pass rush has to be special in this game. And when you go back and look at that game from a few weeks ago, BYU got after the quarterback. They had, I think, 4 sacks in the first half and consistently provided pressure. Now, some of those were coverage sacks because they only rushed 3 or 4 and got to the quarterback late because he had to hold on to the ball. But I think if you can put pressure on Texas Tech's quarterback and make him make quick decisions, he's not very mobile. You can get him into some 3rd and long situations. You can get them behind the chains. I think that's going to be big for BYU's defense. And offensively, it's all going to be about Bear Bachmeier and taking care of the football. He can't give up bad interceptions. He can't put the ball on the ground. If BYU takes care of the football and Bear Bachmeier just plays a clean game, manages the game, doesn't put them in positions to hurt them, I think you're going to have a game that comes down to the 4th quarter, and I think it could go either way. And so I think that's the key to this game. I think Bears got to play super clean. I think you got to generate a pass rush, whether that's blitzing linebackers with your front 4, whatever it may be. I think you have to find a way to get after the passer in this one.
The great Dennis Pitta is on BYU Sports Nation. Dennis, it has been, for lack of a better phrase, a wild, emotional roller coaster for BYU and their football program this week, with everything that has gone on with the Kalani Sitake situation and the real idea that he's going to leave for Penn State. This team wasn't even sure they were going to have their head coach with them, at least not in the long term after this game. And so that's tough for a team to have to go through and work through, but here we are. Kalani's locked in, and so it's been this galvanizing circle the wagons moment, we think. But what type of team do you expect to show up emotionally speaking, given that happened with their head coach? Then you throw in the idea that BYU is still on the outside looking in with the College Football Playoff Committee and the clear disrespect that is there. While the nation is giving them momentum, there's just a lot happening. So what type of team do you expect to show up emotionally here at AT&T Stadium?
Well, I think you have to think that BYU is going to come out and be very emotional and extremely hyped for this game, because you saw the emotion that emoted when Kalani stood in front of the team and said, "Hey, I'm coming back." And they darn near threw him up on their shoulders and carried him off the practice field. And so there was certainly a lot of emotion around being able to retain Kalani as the head coach. But on the other end of the coin, you look at a program like Ole Miss and you see the distraction that can be with this whole coaching carousel circus that's gone on in college football. And now you have a college football playoff team in Ole Miss that doesn't have a head coach. And that was nearly BYU just a few days ago. And so that certainly, I'm sure, provided some kind of a distraction. I mean, with Kalani, talking to Penn State and interviewing there and all the different things that went on, all those distractions, he wasn't able to totally focus on the game plan and what they need to do. And I'm sure that permeated throughout the building with assistant coaches. Well, shoot, if Kalani goes, are we going with him? Who's going to be the interim head coach if he leaves? And then with the players, you have all that uncertainty. Is our coach going to leave? Is he going to be at Penn State when we play in the Big 12 championship game and potentially in the college football playoff? That's certainly a distraction that may have hurt their preparation throughout the course of the week. And that's something to monitor. But emotionally, to originally answer your question, I think the emotions are going to be incredibly high. You're going to be extremely motivated to have a better showing than you did the first time around in Lubbock. And the emotion of just getting your head guy back and the love and appreciation they have for him as their head coach, I mean, emotions are going to run extremely high. I just hope that the execution and the preparation will be able to match that emotion.
Dennis, you referenced the video that BYU put out and how the team responded to Kalani making the announcement that he's staying there. We certainly know what we hope it does for this team tomorrow, but let's take it a little more big picture. Knowing that this football program has its head coach, and we hope all of the coaches underneath him locked up long term, what does it mean for the BYU football program to be in this situation with Kalani in the fold for the foreseeable future?
Well, it's huge. I mean, it's huge from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, you had recruits, I'm sure, just yesterday saying, well, am I signing this letter of intent? Is the coach going to actually be there when I sign? And you look at Ole Miss, you look at Penn State, you look at some of these programs who are struggling to recruit right now because there's so much uncertainty in who the coach is going to be. And that's a huge, huge part of the decision for these kids. Where am I going? Yeah, NIL is a big part of that decision now as well, but they want to know who they're playing for. And you take that example with Bear Bachmeier. Bear Bachmeier originally committed to Stanford, went there for spring ball. There was uncertainty in, the coaching ranks there, and he ends up transferring. And so stability at the top of any program is crucial for recruiting. And anytime there's some instability or uncertainty, it just kills your recruiting classes, and it makes people, well, I'm gonna keep thinking about this. I'm gonna open up, my recruiting again, and I'm gonna look elsewhere and try to find some more stability in other programs. But now BYU doesn't have to go through that, and BYU can lock down those recruits. Ryder Lyons can sign his letter of intent like he did yesterday, and have confidence knowing Kalani's going to be the head coach there. That's what I signed up for, and that's what I'm hoping to get when I get to that program. And you have none of that uncertainty anymore at BYU. And so from that perspective, from a recruiting perspective, it's huge. And recruiting is everything in college football. It's how you build your program, not only in the transfer portal, but recruiting all these high school kids. And that's the one thing that they want to know. Who am I playing for? And how long is he going to be there? And there's none of that doubt anymore at BYU.
Dennis, BYU is a perturbed, annoyed animal, if you will, given everything that has been said by the College Football Playoff Selection Committee this week. So with that in mind, and with what happened with Kalani Sitake and where we are in the Big 12 Championship, what's your prediction for tomorrow's game between BYU and Texas Tech?
Well, let me say, I appreciate the use of the word perturbed. I don't think it's utilized enough in our vernacular day to day. And I appreciate that in describing what BYU is coming into this game. Listen, I think I said it earlier. I like BYU in this matchup. I mean, I've played enough football and played teams twice enough during a season that I understand how difficult it is to beat a good team. Now, playing bad teams, yeah, you want to play them as many times as you want. But beating a good team twice is one of the hardest things to do in sports. And that's the challenge that Texas Tech is going to have in this game. And I think they're going to have that understanding like, man, this is going to be a different animal than what we saw the first time around. Number one, we don't have an entire stadium behind us. We'll have maybe half that crowd. It's going to be a completely different environment. And BYU is going to be incredibly motivated. And we talked about it. Their emotions are going to be high. They just locked down their coach for a long time. But they are perturbed, and they are vexed, and they are annoyed at how they performed the first time around, because you look at that game, and that was a complete anomaly and an outlier based on how they've played throughout the entire year. You had uncharacteristic drops, penalties, and that's just the nature of being on the road with a raucous crowd, but you had false start penalties that hurt them. You had turnovers. You had special teams bad plays. And this special teams unit has been so good for them, generating big plays for them throughout the course of this year. And they were the ones hurting them in this game in Lubbock a few weeks ago. And so, man, I expect a completely different outcome. And I if I were betting on this game, which I won't, but if I were, I would be hammering BYU because, again, I went back and watched the game, and you take out the emotion, and you just realize Texas Tech was not world beaters in that game. They couldn't do much in the red zone. They were opportunistic. They hit a couple big shots. They had to convert, especially in the first half on their long scoring drives. They had to convert 3rd and longs. You had one where the quarterback tried to throw a hold shot on their first touchdown, and he floated that thing. Probably should have been picked, but the receiver came back and made a really nice play coming back and adjusting to the football. A play that at minimum for BYU's defense is probably a deflected pass and lands incomplete, and they force a punt. There was just some things in that game that I don't think were completely sustainable on Texas Tech's end, and things that BYU hadn't committed or done all year that you wonder, was that just an outlier? And it certainly probably was. And so I like our chances. I'm picking BYU to win this one.
That's what we like to hear, Dennis. Always good to have you on the show. We appreciate you joining us. Excellent insight, and we'll all be tuned in tomorrow. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. And I have to add one thing, because this I forgot to mention. There is an element of disrespect that BYU carries with them into this game, because they have been disrespected nationally. Bear Bachmeier has been disrespected, being left off the Freshman of the Year award. BYU has been disrespected, being ranked number 11 outside of the college football playoff. I constantly get disrespected on this program by not having enough time. I understand the disrespect, and I understand the motivator that can be. And so BYU is a dangerous, perturbed animal, as in the words of the wise Spencer, coming into this game. Man, I like them. I'm so excited to watch it tomorrow.
All right, I'm pumped up. Dennis, thank you so much. Not a better way to end an interview than with that. Thank you. The great Dennis Pitta joining us here on BYU Sports Nation. If you miss any interviews, trending topics, or any other segments throughout the week, you can always go to the BYU Sports Nation YouTube channel, where you can watch all BYU Sports Nation content anytime on demand.